Topic that everyone was speaking about yesterday. Former President Jacob Zuma now has to dig very deep into his pockets to pay his legal fees after the North Gauteng High Court ruled that he is liable for his own litigation costs as the criminal cases that are instituted against him in his personal capacity. Yesterday, Deputy Judge President Aubrey Ledwaba also ordered that the state attorney should take necessary steps to recover all the taxpayers' money that has been spent on litigation costs thus far. This follows Zuma's pleaded poverty earlier this year. He faces 16 charges of fraud, corruption, money laundering and racketeering stemming from 783 alleged payments made to him in relation to the arms deal when he was the MEC of Economic Affairs and Tourism in KwaZulu-Natal. Now, these charges were dropped in 2009, but you'll remember they were reinstated this year. Joining us telephonically, we've got the DA leader, Mmusi Maimane. Mmusi, it's great to have you. Thanks so much for being with us here on Morning Live. All right, we'll work on that line. But in studio with me, we've got Sandile Swana. He's from the Wits School of Governance, and Dakota Legoete, the acting spokesperson for the ANC. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Good to have you both with us here on Morning Live.
Good morning, to all the viewers.
All right. Let me just try one more time to see if we've got Mr. Maimane on the line. No, he's not on the line. We'll get him back. We did test, he was there, but it seems that the line is broken down. Let's begin off by getting the ANC's reaction to yesterday's ruling.
Thank you very much, Leon, and once more to the viewers. As the African National Congress, the governing party, the leader of society in South Africa, it is in our interest to respect institutions of our democracy, including the judiciary. So as a consequence of that, as the African National Congress, we welcome the ruling of the court yesterday, and we hope it will go a long way in helping us to shape our young constitutional democracy in the Republic. You would know that as a constitutional democracy, when there's a dispute in any of our institutions, be it the state, be it private individuals, be it the organs of the states and other related issues, the final upbeat of any dispute in a constitutional democracy is the court, is the judiciary. And in this case, the court has pronounced itself that the practice that we have had from earlier as our democracy, which all other presidents had benefit to, which all other members of the executive had benefit to, that particular practice was wrong. And as a consequence of that, I think as the ANC, we have instructed our president, who's also the president of the Republic, to look and study the judgment, and upon that, we will decide what course of action to take. But for now, we'll leave to respect the outcome of the court.
Interesting to hear you saying that it was wrong, what was initially followed in these regards. Is that a party stance, the fact that you believe that it was wrong?
That's why I initially said that we respect the institutions of the state, including the judiciary. It was a pronouncement of court. We did not know that it was wrong until yesterday. And you'd know, whether it's a state attorney, is the auditor general, is the ministerial handbook, is treasury regulations, none of those institutions and the establishment of oversight has ever raised this particular matter as being wrong until there was a court judgment yesterday. So for now, it's a new trend. It means things will never be done as usual. It's a matter that we still have to assess. That's why we have instructed our president, Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa, to go and look at the matter and decide from there what course of action do we need to take. For now, as the organization, we respect the ruling of the court, and we respect all state institutions and organs, including our administrators of law and justice. We don't want to cast any aspersion or any shadow of doubt. We respect the judgment. Good.
Right, let's get the DA. We've got Mr. Maimane back on the line now. Mmusi, my first question to you really is, you know, it was basically the DA that brought about this application to the court, and the ruling came in yesterday, and the court has now decided that the former president has to pay for his legal costs. How are you feeling about the ruling?
Good morning, Jan, and I think what's absolutely important is that for us, we feel it's a victory for the people of South Africa. South Africans have been paying for Jacob Zuma's legal fees for years. And when I called President Ramaphosa and said to him, President, this thing is completely wrong. It is illegal in law, it's irrational in principle, And ultimately, it needs to be stopped. His response to me was, no, we have an arrangement that President Mbeki entered in with Mr. Zuma, and now I am bound by that agreement and must proceed. It was not an agreement in law, because when you look at the State Attorney Act, it makes it quite clear that the taxpayer cannot be financing an arrangement where a criminal proceeding is taking place. These were crimes committed by Mr. Zuma prior to being the President of the Republic. So it would be tantamount to me committing a crime today, and then tomorrow, if I become the President, saying, no, let the government pay for it. It is completely wrong, and therefore I think it was an arrangement by the ANC to sponsor a system of corruption. And let's dare never forget that this thing is not happening just with Mr. Zuma. It spreads itself out to when ministers like Batabila Dlamini litigate and go to court delinquently, in effect, and get found out by court, yet the South Africans are paying for it. It goes to where Minister Gigaba does the same practice. It's an ANC model. And therefore, I am of the complete view that yesterday, we managed to stop the ATM that has been used to finance all of these cases that ANC ministers have gotten themselves into. And it's about time now that if anyone wants to litigate, they do so at their own cost, especially in criminal matters, which is what the State Attorney Act says.
I'd like to hear from you what your estimates. Obviously, you've done a lot of work into looking at what the costs may be. So the court ruling that the state should take the necessary steps to recoup the legal funds and recover the taxpayers' money. Do you have an estimate of what you believe was spent on this court case to date?
Well, at this point in time, we are anticipating anything close to about 50 million rand. And there are a couple of ways that you work that out. When we asked for the legal fees of Mr. Hardy, at the point in Parliament, those were coming at about, they initially projected 19 million. But we know for a fact that those weren't the only costs that were involved. There were other cases upon which Mr. Zuma litigated unnecessarily so. We know, despite its case, for example, has cost us over 10 million rand. And one of the judgments, part of the judgment in the matters against Mr. Zuma, essentially in the cases that were stated, is that he got a cost order against him. So he needs to be able to finance some of the legal fees that we faced and ultimately the legal fees that the EFF faced. So I think more than anything, Mr. Zuma is going to be paying closer to 50 million rand. But this is a pensioner. And therefore, if Mr. Ramaphosa was actually adamant about fighting corruption, it needed to be clear that the state has no capacity of recruiting that kind of money from a pensioner in effect. And we should have stopped it rather than simply saying we're bound by an agreement that was irrational and illegal anyway.
Okay. I want to bring Sandile. I want to bring you into this conversation now. If I heard Mmusi correctly, he said it's sitting at around 19 million rand. That's what the figure is standing at. I might be wrong, but I'll get a correction if I am wrong. Do you believe that the ANC should have supported this when former President Thabo Mbeki spoke about the fact that the state should cover the costs of Zuma? I mean, should the party have stood up and said, no, this is not a good idea?
Thank you, Leanne. The first thing I will say is that we must not think that the people of the DA and the EFF are more intelligent or more knowledgeable than the ANC people. If there's something that the DA and the EFF knew, the likes of Advocate Butega and many top lawyers, the top lawyers are in the ANC, so they knew. So we must not think that they are more clever. So that we need to get out of the way. The second thing that we need to, if you look at the charge sheet itself of Zuma, the charge sheet says these activities of corruption started in 1995, meaning that within months of Mandela and the ANC taking over the country, Zuma was already active in pursuing this corruption. It's in the charge sheet. And the charge sheet categorizes these transactions into tax fraud, racketeering, corruption. Corruption is a very specific crime in South African law. It's not just saying, people use it very generally. So when you look at those corruptions, those are crimes that you commit personally. And Advocate Mmusi made this completely clear during his arguments. So Thabo Mbeki is a very well-educated man, very, very erudite indeed. So these things he would have known from the start that there's no basis for this. And the ANC, the NEC of the ANC would have known that there's no basis for these actions, because every money that you spend as government, there is a law, and you must know which paragraph you are using to spend that money. And they were spending this money. If you look even at the charge sheet of Zuma, the name of the presidency or the state is not there. The people who are charged there are private individuals in their private capacities. So I would want to say that the ANC should have stopped this very early on, very, very early on, at least as early as 2004.
And that's the reality. And we bring the ANC into this because, you know, the ANC never ever terminated this agreement that Zuma made with former President Thabo Mbeki about his legal costs. Why? Why was it never questioned?
Thank you very much once more. Let me start where we are supposed to know the conceptualization of our democracy. Just to define, there are a number of democracies. In our case, it's a constitutional democracy. In other countries, for instance, United Kingdom, Swaziland, their democracy is based on a monarchy. In other countries, like in our neighbors in Zimbabwe, their democracy is what we call parliamentary democracy. Now, in our case, which is a constitutional democracy, it has been a practice and a norm in terms of the ministerial handbook that as part of the packages, the state will take liability for legal fees of members of the executive. And it does happen even in other countries and other democracies where there is a special immunity for those who are in the executive or either those who are head of state. There is nothing wrong about that in terms of those democracies because it has to do with their sovereignty and their right to self-determination. In our case, this has been a practice and a norm. Now, like I earlier said, the court as the highest arbiter in any dispute in the society, it has pronounced itself that this particular practice has been wrong. So it can't be that President Thabo Mbeki, President Zuma or President Cyril Ramaphosa have been wrong because this has been the practice. But it is even extra that we need to consider that in terms of Chapter 9 institutions, be it the Auditor General, be it oversight committees in Parliament, be it the ministerial handbook, be it the Treasury regulation, none of them, even in the past when audits were done, has ever pronounced itself that this particular matter is wrong until yesterday when the court pronounced itself. So it means the business will never be usual for all members of the executive, be it the president, be it the minister, be it the premier, be it an MEC, be it the mayor, be it the councillor in any municipality.
So it's setting a good precedent, and that you have to agree to.
That's why I said as the governing party, which is the custodian of the Constitution of the Republic and the leader of society, we accept and welcome this particular ruling. There's no way that we can go to a level of instability because it's in our interest to have a stable country where there's growth, where there's development, where there's
use
jobs.
state funds for what they are intended for, and that's the betterment of South Africans, not for one individual.
That's correct. That's why we are in a process of ensuring that we're self-correcting as an organization. We take full responsibility because we've been a governing party. We can't even disown any decision that was made either by President Ramaphosa, President Zuma, or President Thabo Mbeki, because those particular comrades were comrades who became presidents as a mandate of our party, the African National Congress. I
want to talk to Mr. Maimane. I want to bring you into the conversation because obviously there's now the issue of paying these funds back. And if I may just, I just want to, for my own sanity, because I know that the line is not that great. When we talk, the money you mentioned, were you saying 19 million? Is that what you're estimating? Okay, good. So I'm glad I got the right amount there. Do you believe that the former president, or when the former president says that he has no money to pay for this and is basically pleading poverty?
I don't actually, because I think the system and the sponsored mechanism of corruption, if the ANC wants to sustain the argument that it was their decision as government, and that in fact they've now learned suddenly that it was irregular, which has been explicitly stated in the Attorney General's Act, then I think the ANC needs to contribute to all of these fees. It was an agreement that was entered by their presidents to protect their president. It was not a decision that you can simply reduce to what the functionaries of state are. And to suggest that now suddenly it's self-correcting is a misnomer, because if it was, it would stop the litigation that Batabile Dlamini is doing, and it would have acted in the case of Malusi Gigaba. And if it was serious about believing in the principle that they stood for, then the presidency would have put up a much better fight. I have seen many judgments before, Leanne, and we've won many cases against the state because they're simply following the rule of law. But ultimately, what is the great challenge is that yesterday they got a court order against them because the case was very open and shut. It was not debatable. This is a criminal case. Yes, government can pay for litigation in matters where, if the MEC for Education gets involved, where kids end up in an accident or something like that, of course they must be liable and the state must defend that. We understand that. But when it comes to criminal activity and corruption, this is not for the people of South Africa to pay. And the misleading of society that is occurring here cannot be allowed to stand. And therefore, we stand vehemently saying that it is right that Mr. Zuma must pay and the ANC must get together and help him in this regard, as they did all along. This time it can't be the people of South Africa, it ought to be the organization itself.
Sandile, my question to you really is, if in fact former President Zuma cannot pay these legal fees, what will happen? If he can't cover these fees for his litigation? I mean, we're talking, as we say, in excess of 19 million.
Yeah, thank you. The other thoughts that I have about that is that the PFMA stipulates that if an official of government actually causes irregular expenditure, wasteful expenditure, that official is also personally liable to pay back those monies.
Yeah.
So there's a lot from the state point of view of a lot of people who could go bankrupt actually in their personal capacities because of these decisions, because they obeyed political instructions that were clearly unlawful. When you look at the caliber of the people, the Director General, the various Director Generals, because these decisions were renewed every time they had a chance to reconsider whether they are making the right decisions, at least 3 times. In 2005, I think 2007, and this year, and Cyril Ramaphosa and his DG this year still made the same decisions and sustained it. So those people are highly qualified people who can apply their minds. And because they've failed to apply their minds in the correct manner with the law that is written in plain English, they could be open to personal liabilities as well. So this could bankrupt a lot of people.
Wow. Would the ANC step up and help, as Mr. Maimane was saying, that the ANC should help?
Look, as the African National Congress, we believe that it's important for us to be accountable, because
will you help pay the legal fees?
No, let me come to there. It's important for us to be accountable, because where there is no accountability, there will be anarchy, and where there is anarchy, there will be lawlessness, and where there is lawlessness, there is a failed state. And as the African National Congress, we take responsibility once more. And look, that is a matter that we are still going to discuss amongst ourselves so that we can find a better way. That's why I've said, whether it's President Beki, it's President Zuma, or President Cyril Ramaphosa, whatever decisions they've made whilst in public office, we own up to them. And if the court, like it said yesterday, that some of those decisions have been wrong, I think it gives us an opportunity as a governing party to self-correct, because this is a young constitutional democracy. We are still growing, and the court, as the final arbiter, would still make further pronouncements on any other matter. And by the way, it affects even the DA in the Western Cape, because there are a number of their municipalities, including their provincial government, where the taxpayer paid for their court cases.
Yeah. Look, I don't want this to get into a battle between political parties now, because that's obviously, that's what we want to do. But the question here is, and the conversation that we're having is purely on what the court ruled yesterday. And the simple question I'm asking you is, will the ANC come to the assistance of your party member, your former president, Jacob Zuma, and pay his legal fees? That's all I'm asking.
Of course, that's why we are saying we are owning up to this particular matter.
And you will assist. And
members of the ANC, either through donations and through other forms, they can assist our former president, both as the leader of the ANC and the former state president of the Republic. So I don't foresee any problem for members of the ANC, including the ANC, doing that.
Mmusi, what do you think about that? I mean, the ANC saying that they will assist their former president.
Well, I'm grateful, because if you're going to run a racketeering organization, then everyone must be culpable. in my view, frankly, if we were dealing with a matter where the state had failed citizens in something, then I could half understand why you should set up a litigation. But if you are going to continue to ask ANC members also to contribute to protecting a criminal activity here, then it proves to me the point that I keep making. This is an organization that's set up to capture the state and loot from the people of South Africa, and that's what they're doing. So it's welcomed. I hope they pay the money, and it's 20 million to the people of South Africa. They've got 90 days to do it, and I look forward to it.
Sandile, just a quick question to you. We've seen two big court rulings this week. Firstly, the one we are discussing now. Secondly, the issue of Tamuyani, also overridden by the courts as well. What does this mean for what we're all seeing within the ANC, factionalism? And I'll get you to respond to this as well. But what does this mean for the Zuma faction within the party? Are they losing more and more power within the party or not really?
I think there's something that you've got to understand about the mentality of these people. If you look at their mentality, they've gone to court before knowing they are going to lose. So these are people who go to do these things to demonstrate that they've not lost the will to fight. So it would be a big mistake to think that they've lost the will to fight for their stake in South African public life. Whether they are losing, even the statements that are being made here, even Ramaphosa's faction, if you want to call it that, has got a duty for their own survival to make sure that they don't go recklessly ahead. So there's going to be continuing accommodation here. Even this statement that we will pay for these fees and so on, it's a statement that says we must accommodate our comrades. We must all be together one way or the other. There's only one ANC. There's nobody who's not ANC here. We're all together. So I won't rush in the direction of saying those factions are losing power, this or the other, because people depend on each other.
All right. It is 8 o'clock. I am going to give you a final word because there's a lot to respond to. In terms of the factionalism within the ANC, do you believe that this ruling is going to further divide it? And this factionalism that exists, are you denying that it exists, or is there a big faction?
Look, the issue of factionalism, we have dealt with it prior to Nasrec, when we had preferences. It was not necessarily an establishment of factions being a practice in the ANC. As it is the fact now, as the African National Congress, we are focused, we are far unified, we are busy with the renewal program. As it is now, we are preparing our campaign for the 2019 national general elections, and we are definitely sure that as the African National Congress, if we can work very hard, we'll emerge once more as a governing party come 2019 elections. For now, we are all focused under the leadership of President Cyril Ramaphosa. All of us, including whoever was a former president, it's part of the campaign to ensure that the ANC emerges victorious next year. So that is the focus that we are busy with. All our members, all our structures are focused to that particular point.
All right.
Winning elections, retaining power, ensuring that we deliver on our mandate.
All right, we'll leave it there for this morning. Gentlemen, thanks to all of you for talking to us this morning. Via the telephone, we've got Mmusi Maimane from the DA, Sandile Swana from the Wits School of Governance, and of course, Dakota Legoete from the ANC. Thank you very, very much. It's 8 minutes. SK, let's get the news from you.